Here we are, another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. Are you ready?
Never.
You ready?
Never ready. You just do it anyways. We don't know what you're talking about. We'll find out. Go ahead.
Sound like my wife and kids. Dad, we have no idea what you're talking about. All right. Today we are on episode number 350. 350 episodes, Peter. Woohoo!
Wow.
The title of today's episode is Funding Creative Real Estate Deals in Today's Economy.
Mm-hmm.
Funding creative real estate deals in today's economy.
Okay.
Here's the description. The number one barrier most rookies think of when getting into creative real estate is how they will fund their deals. If this is happening to you, then this single podcast is going to jumpstart your ability to close deals quickly and easily without using your own money, applying and getting bank loans, or even asking your seller to finance it. If you don't want them to, I'm going to do that again.
Mm-hmm.
I put a comma in there for some reason. I don't know why. Okay. Some of the strategies you will hear today are in play post-COVID and work magically in today's economy. More to the point, today's ideas will come into play the higher interest rates climb. Just like in the 70s when rates were as high as 18%.
Mm-hmm.
So our plan today is to equip you with not one, but several approaches to finance your deals once you find them. What you will soon realize is the more choices you have in your back pocket to finance deals, the more relaxed you will be and the more deals you will make. So let's go over the possibilities for you to find those creative deals and become financially free. I can't wait to see what I wrote because I wrote this like 2 weeks ago.
Okay. You know, it's funny. You say 18% on the mortgage. People think, oh, he's exaggerating. No, it was. I was there. 18%. And we complain about 7 now. Can you imagine? 18%.
I can't imagine. I was there too.
Yeah. Well, at least on the one hand, the prices were lower. You could get a house for $30,000, $40,000, $50,000.
Right.
So 18% of something small isn't horrendous.
So true.
Which is, the prices are so high now. The banks really shouldn't need that much interest because that's pretty good bucks if you think of it that way.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just refinancing a line of credit that I have from 7 down to 4 something, and it's like, oh, well, it's a little better, but at this, there's not much left. It's not a big deal when there's not a lot of, principal there to kill you. Anyways, tell us what you're going to say today.
So let's do our housekeeping first. So first thing you should know is we record this podcast every Thursday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We know it's not a good time for most people because they're working, but that's how we've managed to get 350 podcasts because it fits into our schedule. Mm-hmm. So sorry about that. But if you happen to sneak away from work or you want to listen on your phone, you can go check us out because we live stream on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter. So you can check us out just by going to one of those platforms, type in Flipping Houses for Rookies, and you will find us. Then you could, in wherever section they allow you to type, you can ask your questions. Please only ask questions pertaining to the podcast or the topic we're on because we have a short amount of time. Well, I think it's a short amount of time. Most people think an hour is a long time because they don't listen to the whole podcast because they don't have an hour. Anyways, and I know because I can see the stats. But we try to do half-hour podcast, and I think we robbed you too much. So I'd rather do the hour podcast, give you all the information, excuse me, and have you watch, stop and start it whenever you can listen to it. Mm-hmm. In any event, we record it on Thursday morning. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat or in the section wherever you're watching us or listening to us. If you're on the live stream, If not, you can go to WhatsApp Messenger. You can search for Let's Talk Real Estate. We have a group there. It's not a huge group, but it's a very cool group because there's a lot of active people in there. It's like-minded people, just like Napoleon Hill said, which I'll have to tell you that later, Peter, because I'm back into Napoleon Hill. I just ordered a couple more books.
I can tell you are. I've been reading it as well.
Oh, have you?
Yeah. It's an amazing book. It's not how to get rich. It's how to think and grow rich. It's really phenomenal because it applies to any part of life.
I actually ordered some of his other books. So he's got 3 or 4 other books. So anyways, yeah. So anyways, you could go to WhatsApp Messenger and you could go in there. It's kind of like the reason why I talk about Napoleon Hill is because he talks about a mastermind group, and that's a perfect place for you to do that. Mm-hmm. Or you can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com and you can send me a support ticket there. If you want to speak to me or Peter personally, I answer them and I can pass any message on to Peter if you so desire. Lastly, inside of the description, there's a link there. That link is always pertaining to this podcast or some other tools or something that will help you attain whatever we're doing easier and quicker. Realize when we do the podcast, we're just telling you what to do. We don't always tell you how to do it. And the links in the chat are the how-to stuff. So if you want to get into the details and know how to do more, I usually put something in the link so that you can get the details. All right, now we're done with that. I always dread that part of it.
We should make a video commercial. I thought of last week. It's always the same, right?
Yeah.
So we should make a little video recording and just plug her in with a little music background, some dancing girls.
Okay, that's all I need to do is explain to my wife that we're videotaping dancing girls, Peter.
Yeah, well, at least you have an excuse this time.
Have you met Pamela before?
Before you asked.
Yeah, I know.
But this time you have an excuse. It's business.
Here we go. We're going to start. We're going to get off that topic.
Oh, chicken.
Start a podcast. No credit required. No money down. How to buy a house when you don't qualify for a mortgage. Mm-hmm. Even if you can't get a major credit card, you can be a creative real estate investor. I even say real estate is made to take money out of it, not put money into it. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're self-employed, went bankrupt, have a colorful credit history, or no credit at all. Live on disability checks or unemployment. Maybe you just got out of jail and can't get a bank loan, but you can still buy a house.
Who would think?
And make money now, make money monthly, and make money later. If you fully understand and believe supersedes understand, by the way.
That's right.
If you fully understand and believe what we're about to cover in this podcast, for real, no hype. Mm-hmm. Question is, will you believe and apply?
Yeah.
Should we just stop the podcast and let them ponder on that for a minute? Will you actually believe? What does believe mean? Let's look that word up. Go ahead.
I don't know. When I think of meanings of words, I always think of what's the derivation, what's the parts that are put together. Believe. I have no clue the pieces that put together there. But I've talked to people like, oh, my wife doesn't believe in that. It's over right there. It just stops dead. Because the first thing you need to do, like in Think and Grow Rich, is to think like, oh, maybe I could do that. If you don't do that, nothing else happens.
This is true.
By the way, while you're looking at it, did you know there's a workbook? Think and Grow Rich?
Yes.
Yeah, I bought it. I didn't use it enough. Maybe I'll crack that out and try that again. But like gives you steps and like do this, do that, not just read. It makes you apply more. So I thought that was clever of them.
So there's a couple definitions here. Oh, I only like one of them. So one is accept something as true, feels sure of the truth of.
Mm.
Another one is accept the statement of somebody as true.
Mm.
Then another one is have faith, especially like religious faith. Now, all that is kind of like you have a blindfold on, right? And you should put away all your knowingness and self-determinism and just follow drink the Kool-Aid and follow the path and just not think for yourself. That's how I take those three definitions.
Mm-hmm.
This is the definition I like. Feel sure that someone is capable of doing something.
Oh, that's cool.
And the other one is hold something as opinion, think, or suppose. But the definition I think of when I hear believe is feel sure that someone is capable of doing something.
Like believing in someone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you have belief, that happens before you know. When you know, you know. But
Right.
when you don't know, all you got is believe and give it a shot.
Right.
And once you've done it once or twice or three times, then you know for sure because you've done it.
So belief creates vision. Belief creates strength of will.
Mm.
Belief creates resilience. And belief ignites and activates.
That is awesome.
And the derivation sucks. It's Old English, but Bielefin, alteration of Gielefin, German origin, related to Dutch, but it doesn't say what it is.
Yeah, when it doesn't say what it is what it is. It's just an older word for it.
Also to leaf, Lief. But I like that. So why is belief so powerful? Belief creates vision. Belief creates strength of will. Belief creates resilience. And belief ignites activities.
Man, you're reading Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. All that's in there.
Yep.
The vision. It's amazing. That's a great word. Thanks for looking
All right.
at.
So first thing I want to cover today is houses are not like cars when it comes to loans being attached to them.
Mm-hmm.
With a car, when you transfer ownership, you must pay off the loan before passing the title to the new owner.
Yep.
And that's not necessarily true, Peter, because you can do subject to on a car.
Would you do that directly with a seller, but not like a?
The problem is if you do that, then you can't change the title, and the registration insurance has to stay in the owner's name.
Oh yeah.
Right. So you wouldn't likely do that. There's a website. Remember Naomi?
Yeah.
She used to. I forgot the name of the website, but there was a website where she would rent her car out, kind of like a.
Oh yeah.
Like an Airbnb, or you would rent a room out in your house. She would rent her car out, and people would come in, and she would make I don't know, probably $1,000 a month just renting her car out. Of course, she lived in New Haven, so.
Yeah, really. Yeah, right downtown, so people come grab it and drive around. Mm-hmm. Like if you're working 8 hours, you can't use your car. Like that's clever.
Now with real estate, regardless of all the myths out there, you can pass the title with the loan attached,
mm-hmm.
if you know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And these days, many teach it correctly and incorrectly and call this subject to. Mm-hmm. Now, there are a lot of myths, and they are myths, that this is not a myth. There is a clause in every mortgage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's not in a mortgage. I'm going to divert again. So when you buy a house with a loan, there's a couple things that happens there. So the lender, usually, the lender writes a note, or someone. Sometimes, I mean, I do it as a borrower, so you could do it both ways. But there's a note written.
Mm-hmm.
The note, kind of like a promissory note. The note, right? Let's look that word up. The note.
And in layman's terms, we would just call it a loan, right?
No.
Or
Well, yeah, it's the
well,
it's the
well, a
documentation.
note is something written, so it's the written wording that says you got a loan because it's a note.
Right. So a note is a brief record of facts, topics, or thoughts written down as an aid to a memory.
Mhm.
Right. It could be
Yeah.
a short informal letter. Right.
No,
Uh,
there's probably going to be a definition for a written explanation that somebody owes somebody money for something.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like
no.
what you said. It's a record in writing. Is pretty much. There's not.
Hmm.
There's a lot of definitions here.
No, there is. I play notes in music, so it's a
Yeah.
word that you have to define because, like, what do you mean note? I wrote a note.
Okay. So in real estate, it's the document that explains all the terms. You know, how
Mhm.
much you borrow, who's the borrower, who's the borrowee, how much is being borrowed, what the interest rate is, if any, what the length is, if any. Well, there has to be a length.
Payments,
The payments, and then there's
interest.
a lot of jargon, legal jargon, like, you know, if you default, what happens? You know, if someone defaults, what happens? There's
Mhm.
jargon in there, like if the house burns down, and indemnification, which means lawsuits. You know, like who's responsible, who's not responsible. So there's a lot of legal jargon in that, right?
Yep.
Now, here's the thing: if I don't have the money to buy a house, it's likely I don't have money, or I have very little money.
Hmm.
So the note, as far as I'm concerned, is about equivalent to toilet paper, right?
Okay.
Because if I have a note with you and I default the note, then what good is you chasing me if I don't have? You're not going to get, you know, blood out of a stone.
Yeah, I'm going to sue you for what? You don't have the money.
Yeah, right.
Can you send me
So,
$50 a month, maybe?
yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens is it's a lot of legal stuff for you. So nobody would lend money if they didn't do that. So what happens is when you borrow money on real estate, you collateralize the real estate. And that means that if you default on a loan, they could take the house back. Well, on a note, you
Mhm.
can't do that. So what you
Mhm.
need to do is you need to create a thing called a mortgage. And the mortgage is the bridge between the note and the real estate.
Yep.
The mortgage is what allows the collateral to happen. So the mortgage is not, most people think the mortgage is the note,
Yeah.
but it's not. The note is the delineation or the clarification or the writing down of all the rules and regulations. Then it's connected to like a bridge. So if you had a note here and the house there, the mortgage is the bridge that connects the two of them, right?
Hmm.
So when you go to court, you sue for the mortgage because that's the collateral. So basically, when you go to court, so especially on a foreclosure, what's happening is the deed is in the seller's name. I'm sorry, the deed is in the buyer's name or the person that owns the note.
Hmm.
So the person that's foreclosing has to go through court proceedings via the mortgage to sue for the collateral. You have to sue for the collateral to get the house back. So basically, foreclosure means that you're trying to get the deed back for the collateral.
Yep.
So you own the collateral again.
Hmm.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that subject to is confusing because there is a clause in the note that says due on sale clause. What
Hmm.
that means, and this is the confusion, this is a huge confusion for a lot of people. What that means is if you sell the house or transfer the house, they can call the loan due.
Hmm.
That's amateur speak. It's if
Yeah.
you haven't inspected it. Because really all the bank cares about is that the collateral is not broken.
Hmm.
So if I'm paying your mortgage and the mortgage is still in play, and it's still got collateral. So if I don't pay your mortgage, they come after me. And I found this out by accident because what happened to me is I found out. It's a quick story. I've told it before. So I sold the house, subject to, and 3 months later, I'm going in the office. I get served by a sheriff, And I'm like, what the hell is this? So they're saying they're foreclosing on me. And I'm like, foreclosing on me for what? I was panic stricken. Like, what the hell's going on here? Right. Well, it was the house I had sold 3 months earlier. I had an attorney that kept the money. It was 140 grand. He kept the money and didn't pay the mortgage company. Okay. Now he ended up paying. He was pissed off at me because he was like, I got to pay $6,000 in fees. And I'm like, well, then you should have paid it 3 months ago when I gave you the money. What are you yelling at me for?
I love when the criminal complains of getting caught. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. So the reason why I'm telling you that is because the bottom line is, I learned, this was a bunch of years ago, I learned that when you're doing subject to, the deed was in my name, okay, or the trustee's name. I was a trustee at the time.
Yeah.
My partner was the beneficiary. The deed is in the trustee's name because we put it in a trust, right? But in any event, the deed was in my name. The mortgage was in the seller's name. So when the bank starts foreclosure, the first thing they do is they go do a title search, which tells them the activity of the title for the last 50 years. Yeah. And if there's any liens on there, because they're going to care if there's liens, tax liens, water liens, maintenance liens, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So the point that I'm making is that when you do a subject to deal and you transfer the title, both you and the seller are plaintiffs in the lawsuit to get the collateral back.
Yeah.
So it's not, the bank knows that. So the only way that you would possibly have trouble, and it took me a long time to figure this out, on a due on sale clause, is there are companies out there like Special SPS, SLS. I don't know. They're
servicing companies.
Yeah, they're collection companies. So what they do is they buy default loans or high risk loans, and their job is to collect. So they're very ruthless on collecting because their job is to collect because they have nothing but troubled loans.
Yeah.
They will attempt to trigger the due on sale clause. It's never happened to me. I had a friend that happened to, and basically the only thing that will happen is well, you say, my payments are current. Do you want me to stop paying so you can foreclose on me? And
yeah, well,
and
how would the service company even get it if the loan is being paid? You said if it's a risky loan, but if it's just a regular loan and the payments are coming in every month, what do they care? They're getting the interest on the loan.
I think what they do is when they sell the packages, they give them good ones and bad ones, and they just try to make a package. And you have to be in the package,
Yeah.
All right. So what I'm saying, I went off on a 10-minute tangent there, but I wanted to explain that subject to is not, and then we take it one layer more, which I just talked about. We put the house into a trust. Now I could do 3 podcasts on a trust. I did a 6.5 hour training on trusts, okay, or how to do subject to, and it was one of the best trainings I ever did. But listen to me carefully because you will confuse the bejesus out of anybody when you don't talk this language. And Peter and I are very stuck on words because words have specific meanings. They generate specific mental image pictures and they have legal connotation. That's why there's things called law books.
Yeah.
Okay. The trust is a property trust. A property trust, which means the only thing in the trust is the property.
Yep.
You go to any lawyer and say, I want to do subject to, and I want you to, make me a trust. And their heads will spin. They'll tell you, well, it could be all the way from $15,000 down to $1,500, depending on the attorney's understanding of a trust. And I promise you, 98% of them have no clue what they're doing when it comes to trusts. They have to specialize in them. It's a property trust. When we do our documents, we have a warranty deed of trust. It's a 2-page document. Once the seller signs it, they're warrantying the deed, which means they're warranted that there's no liens or anything on it that we don't know about. They are giving us ownership, and they're generating the trust all in one document. It's that simple. You don't need an attorney to do any of that. If you know what you're doing, and if you have, paperwork like what we have, right?
So just to clarify, this is a trust just on the one house or condo, whatever it is, not on your entire estate, right?
It's not a family trust. It's not irrevocable or revocable trust. It's not any of that. That other stuff is for a whole different. Trusts are like tools, you know. You
Yeah.
need a hammer for a nail. You need a saw for a board. You know what I mean. You need pliers for a bolt. You know what I mean. That kind. It's like this is a specific tool for a specific thing.
And this trust, the property trust, that's not 1,500 or 15,000.
No, I just told you we generate it with this deed, this warranty deed of trust. It's 2 pages, and it costs $70 to register to usually $70 to file
Good.
it. It doesn't need to be complicated. It is not complicated. I've done dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of them, right?
Yeah.
All right. Off that topic, here's another little fact. You can get a loan on a piece of real estate and never pass the deed.
Never?
Right.
Go ahead.
So a seller can give you a loan on a piece of property and not give you the deed.
Oh.
We call that an agreement for deed or a land contract. In some states, Connecticut, it's called a bond for deed. But basically, a lot of people don't understand what a land contract is. A land contract, well, first of all, it came from, hundreds of years ago when there were not buildings on properties, edifices on properties. Mm-hmm. So the land contract would be you could buy this tract of land or this tract of land and just pay me monthly. And then when you get me paid off, I'll give you the deed or the deeds.
Yeah.
Right. So it's obviously come into flourishing in today's generation with all the edifices and the properties on the houses have buildings on them, right?
Yeah.
So what a bond for deed they're all the same thing. An agreement for deed is the best way to understand it. So basically you write an agreement saying this is what I'm going to do as the buyer. And when I complete these tasks, one of which is paying you off, you're going to pass the deed to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's in essence a loan without getting the deed. Now, sometimes a subject to owner is willing to let you take over payments, but not pass the deed.
Mm-hmm.
So we would use an agreement for deed. It's the same transaction, just different paperwork. And I'm not trying to get too sophisticated here, but I'm just trying to make you understand that this is how you get houses without loans, without a bank loan.
Well, what I like about what you do, and I've learned from you, is there's layer after layer after layer. Mm-hmm. Like, there's ideal things. Oh, yeah, here's the house. I don't have a mortgage. Just start making payments, and here's your deed. Thanks a lot. See you later.
Right.
Owner financing. Beautiful. And it goes all the way up to like the complete opposite. But there's all these stages in the middle. Like, I can't get the deed. Well, you won't do that either. Well, if I don't do that, then maybe we'll just do a lease. But you have layers.
And that's the next point that I'm going to bring up. And if this is too far in the weeds for you, if you don't know how to do subject to, and you don't know how to do a land contract because it's too far in the weeds and you're a rookie and you just want to do an easy deal and make some money, then you could just do what you just said. You could do a lease with an option to purchase. Right. Mm-hmm. And that has that has no risk.
Yeah.
Right. A lease with an option is no risk. I mean, if you don't perform, they might be pissed off at you and you might get some uncomfortable phone calls where they're yelling at you, but they can't sue you. They can't do any of that. See, that's the cool thing about my system is there's a shut-off point. Like if you're doing a slot deal, a sandwich lease option transfer, and if you don't know what that is, go to Flipping Houses for Rookies. But a sandwich lease option transfer, which is pretty much wholesaling lease options.
Yeah.
You can do an option, just a straight option, which is much like what the realtors do, or you can do a rent to own, which is where you stay in the deal. It's like a sandwich lease option, but you stay in the deal. Mm-hmm. And you make money now, money monthly, money later. Once you go past that, because you're going down the hierarchy, right?
Uh-huh.
Once you go down that, you get into subject to. At that exact point is when you change your liability. So a slot deal, an option deal, and a rent to own have no liability other than you need to pay or you got to get out. Right?
Yeah.
As soon as you get a deed in your name, then all of a sudden the liability shows up. but so do all the tax benefits, so do all the
Mhm.
other rights that you have as owning a piece of property.
Yep.
Right. So in the beginning, you should stick to sandwich lease option transfers, option agreements, and or rent to owns until you get used to doing some transactions. You don't get into all the legal beagle stuff and into the weeds and have a bunch of risk. Because here's what happens. Once you have a deed in your name, risk could involve outside of the property. Right. So risk could mean that you're being sued not only for the property proceeds, but if you have other assets, they can dip into that too.
Mhm.
It's not likely, but it could happen depending on the attorney. So does all that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, and this is what I'm saying. There's like, it isn't like I buy real estate. Like, what kind of real estate? What kind of deal? And what kind of transactions can you do right now? Because you're new at this. Do the easy things first. Learn the
Right.
business. Get used to it. Start finding people to help you with things. Then get to the fancier stuff where you have a deed and the benefits from it. Um, but it's like levels, and you can
Right.
find the one that works for you. and
Okay,
work
so
from there.
let's talk about the big pink elephant in the room then.
Yeah.
Okay, so all this is hunky dory, this is all nicey nicey, and this is all goody goody. If you find a seller that's willing to do this,
Mm-hmm.
what happens when your seller doesn't want to do any of this? Right?
He,
Like
he wants money.
he wants all cash. He wants to do a deal, but he wants all cash.
Yeah.
So what do you do then? So most people think, oh, that's not a creative deal, because as in other podcasts before this, because I kind of have like a little series going on here, but like in a few podcasts before this, we talked about what's the difference between conventional real estate and creative real estate. Although I hate those words, but creative real estate is controlling the paper attached to the real estate.
Yeah.
Right. So it's either you control it or own it. Right.
Yeah.
Most people think it's just creative real estate is just for no money people. Right. I got to tell you, I have clients that have more money than me, and I'm training them how to do creative real estate.
Yeah. Well, why spend your money if you don't have to? The millionaire's wife goes to the Mercedes place, buys an $80,000 car, and takes a loan out. Why? Because she's only paying 3%, and her $80,000 is in investments making 10, 12, 15%. Why
Right.
should she take that? So it's just savvy.
Right.
Use your money wisely.
So what do you do when a seller says, I don't want to do payments, I want to sell all cash?
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is what happened to us during COVID. So we were forced to implement these strategies. And it took me, meaning you and I, a year and a half to like realize, shit, we should be doing this.
Mm.
It was right under our nose, right?
Yep.
So you ever hear that from a seller, Peter?
What?
I don't want to do payments. I want to do all cash.
Once in a while.
Yeah.
Occasionally.
98% of all your calls
"Please,
are like that.
Don't give me the money now, please."
Yeah.
Once in a while you find somebody goes, I don't want all the money right now because my taxes would be so bad. I wish I could spread it out. Go, geez, I got just the deal for you, buddy.
Right.
But savvy people know that. So when you talk to people who have property, who have done real estate, who are investors, they know about that. I want to sell my portfolio out. I have 10 properties, but it's a lot of tax ramifications. And I wish I could sell them one at a time. And you go,
Right.
check this out.
But my point is 98% of the time, this is what you're going to hear. You're not going to hear what Peter's talking about.
No, just keep
Right.
your ears open for it. When you hear it,
Yep.
get up.
So when you hear this, I want all cash, most rookies, most people, unless you're in my coaching group and I show you how to do this differently, right?
Yep.
Think that the creative real estate music stops and the show is over. They think the curtain goes down.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're here now.
Here we are.
First, the definition of creative real estate to me is different than most, right? Which is what I was just talking about. It means your craft has to do with what controls the property.
Mm-hmm.
Realtors deal only with the real estate or the house.
Yeah.
Not with what controls the house. which is why they need money.
Mm-hmm.
Example, if you take over a mortgage subject to or a land contract like we were just talking about, even do a lease option to acquire the house, you can then sell on a lease with an option to buy, or assign that lease with an option to buy, or pass the rights to your buyer and get them to pay,
Mm-hmm.
or do all the maintenance, repairs, and everything else. So you don't have to. So there's no landlording in this sale, right?
Yep.
Or you could control the property with an option agreement. So if your seller wants all cash, you explain how all cash now deals have an expense to getting paid now. Right? And that expense is, as we call it, your cost to sell, which runs between 12 and 15%. So at closing, the seller will need 12 to 15% in equity or money out of pocket to pay for the closing costs. Okay, now that 12 to 15% is pretty much 5 to 6% is for a realtor or for marketing.
Mm-hmm.
It's 3% for negotiating, because when you sell a house, you don't get full asking price. So the average discount given for a seller is 3%. There's 3% for repair costs, and the repair cost could even be on a brand new house. Well, not a brand new house, but on a house that's just been renovated, because here's what happens. An inspector's going to charge you $400 or $500. They're going to want to justify their fee, and they're going to go in and they're going to find code violations. If your house was built 10 years ago, the building codes are different now than they were 10 years ago. So things like the railings, the hand railing on the backyard is supposed to be 42 inches and yours is 50 inches. So there's things like that. They're code violations.
Yeah.
Not that they need to be repaired, but what they do is they spook your seller. They spook your buyer. So now the seller's stuck with a spook buyer because the inspector came in and scared him. So what I call this 3% is not repair money, but bribe money. Mm-hmm. So you either need to do the repairs to keep them in the deal, or you need to give them back money at closing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the last number is 3% for actual closing costs. Most places there's a 1% conveyance fee, which means when they convey the deed, the city gets 0.5% and the state gets 0.5%. Plus you have your closing agent or your attorney. Plus you have prorated taxes, prorated water bills, prorated sewer bills, prorated oil bills, stuff like that. It's conservative at 3%. That all adds up to 15%, right? Now,
yep.
If you do all of that work, right? So basically, the seller's not going to get, I'm not, even myself, and I feel like I'm pretty savvy with real estate. I don't get, a couple times I've got 8%, but it's usually 10%, 11% closing costs, no matter what I do. So even if you had a savvy seller and they did 10%, a $200,000 house would mean they're giving away $20,000 at the closing.
Yep.
That's your money if you do the work, right? Now, like I said, if you do all the work to find a buyer and close it, you can get a lion's share of this money,
right?
Without a license, because what happens is when you sign an option agreement, what you're getting is a small equity share in the property, not a controlling equity share, a very small equity share. And the law reads that as long as you have an equity share in the property, you can sell it as an owner.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how you get away with not having a license, because you have a very minute equity share in the property and you don't need a license. So here's how you do this. You get your buyer to supply the funds to close, just like in wholesaling, except this house is a pretty house and top dollar. So you tell your seller, okay, I'll agree to $180,000 because it's a $200,000 house, and they say that it's going to take 10%, which 180 is the high end, but they're going to spend $20,000 in closing, right?
Yeah.
So you tell your seller to sign a 90-day option agreement with you, which gives you the minute equity share that we were just talking about. So you could sell as an owner. And as long as the seller gives you a minimum of 10% discount, like we just talked about, you can make a profit, pay all cash, and still be creative.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Plus, you're only asking for 90 days to find a buyer, not 6 months like the realtor.
That's right.
So basically, here's what happens: if you had an option agreement for 180,000, which would be ultra, you could do better than that. You could definitely do 170, 175.
Mm-hmm.
But to be ultra conservative, it's 180. If all the houses around there are selling for 200 plus, 205, 195, and you come out of the chute with a price of 185 or 187, would you get attention?
Oh yeah, especially nowadays.
If the house is equivalent to the other houses. I mean, obviously, if it's an ugly house, you don't want to do this with an ugly house. You're doing it with a pretty house. Yeah. Here's what I'm talking about. You have an option agreement for 180. You go sell it for 187 or 185. You make $5 or $7 grand for doing the transaction, and you'll probably get a bidding war or some sort of because it's below market value by 8%. Now, here's the thing: most will ask, well, why aren't you going to have closing costs? Yeah, well, the seller's going to have that 3%. That's going to be on the settlement statement, but they're not going to have the rest of it.
Yeah.
Right. So they're going to pay. They have to pay their conveyance tax. There's no way around that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or if they give you a much more discount, then if they give you a 15% discount, you might agree to pay it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because there's enough money for you to do that.
Right.
So there is going to be about a 3% closing cost when you do this. Okay. And they know that. They're going to have to hire their own attorney. They're going to have to do all this stuff. You can't do that for them. Right. Okay. So the cool thing about this, okay, let me keep going here because I want to add a few things here. So, okay. Still, all right, so if they still don't want to do this and they want you to buy the property,
mm-hmm.
you tell them the only way you could pay cash is if you get a 30% discount. So on a $200,000 house, how much is that? $140, right?
Yeah, you're getting $60,000 off.
Right.
So you're at $140.
Right. So what I do is the Mayo formula, which is, as far as I'm concerned, Ron LeGrand did, and I'm sure he didn't. He probably found it somewhere else. But maximum allowable offer is the after renovated value. In other words, if the house is pretty, all fixed up, times 70% minus repairs.
Yeah.
And what I do for repairs is I do $25 to $35 per square foot, and I don't get estimates or anything like that. I just do the math on the square footage. And I deduct that.
Mm-hmm.
I always deduct an extra $5 grand off just for myself in case I want to wholesale. Right?
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to pay all cash, now you got enough of a discount that you can go find money.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you would find money is with self-directed IRAs, which is the most popular. If you know anybody who's been working for a good-sized company for 10 years and they're vested, they have an IRA. Especially if they're significantly younger than 60 years old or 65 years old, that money's just sitting there, and they're getting a rate of return off of mutual funds. They can actually call Quest Trust, which, by the way, we did a whole podcast on this. I forgot the number. Was on how to do this. But what you do is you don't talk to them about money. If you have somebody who has an IRA and you say, are you interested in making more interest than what you're making now?
Mm-hmm.
Have them call you. What you do is you call Quest Trust. I have a number here if you want.
Mm-hmm.
Quest Trust.
Yeah,
so the phone number for Quest
Yeah.
Trust is 713-702-1136. So Quest Trust is 713-702-1136. You call them and tell them that you're looking for lenders, and they will indoctrinate your lender on how it works. You don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just call Quest Trust and tell them that you're going to send people their way that have IRAs and are willing to lend you money, and you want them to explain it to them.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the most popular way to do it. And believe me, they're right under your nose. You just need to start bragging about your deal. Like, I got this $200,000 house, and the guy wants me to pay $140,000 or $135,000. I need to borrow money.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, another way to get money is someone's line of credit. Maybe you know somebody's got a line of credit. You were just talking about it a few minutes ago. We've done that with your line of credit.
Yeah.
You just said you're paying 4% for your line of credit.
It was 4, went up to 7, and I'm switching it to another company another one of my credit unions that's 4.24.
Yeah.
Fixed instead of a line. But I'm going to keep the line because I wrote the check once 2 years ago, 3 years. You got the house. I wrote the check. We renovated it and made a good bit of money. And it's 4%. So all I had to do was pay the interest on that every month, and it wasn't a lot.
Right.
It was $100 or something. It was tiny.
Right.
A few months later,
and when we renovate, then when we renovated it, we turn around but you and I partnered on a deal like that. But you could, your person that has a home line of credit could pay 4% or 5% and charge you 9%.
Mm-hmm.
Not just by default of how it works, right? Okay, so another way to do it is you can do crowdfunding, right? Or you could do cross collateral.
What's that one?
Yeah, so self-directed funds, I'm not going to go over today. I just went over that already because we covered in detail. Oh, here it is. I put it right here. I didn't realize it. So, yeah, I should know better. I would do something like this. So it was podcast number 315, a comprehensive look at self-directed IRAs to purchase profitable real estate deals. Yep. So if you want to borrow from an IRA, go listen to podcast number 315. Someone's line of credit, or HELOC, which is a home equity line of credit. It's an acronym, HELOC, HELOC, home equity line of credit, are usually given up to about 80% of the house's value.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And are often low interest rates, like we just spoke to. So the family or friend whom has this position could borrow, like I said, at 4% and lend you at 9%, now becoming your private lender.
Mm-hmm.
Crowdfunding, this strategy is relatively new and allows an investor to use money from the public, like GoFundMe or Kickstart, to raise the money. And also you can use realtyshares.com. So you can go to GoFundMe. GoFundMe is just, like we did that for my mom when my dad died, and we raised $6,000. That's for everything. Kickstart is a site that there are, what do they call them? Investor. They're a certain type of investor. I can't think of the name of it. But they look for businesses and they want to invest. They're risky investors, right? So that's where the Kickstart is for new adventures. And then obviously realtyshares.com is about real estate. So you can raise money that way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Cross collateral, if you already have other real estate or know someone who does, you could tap into that existing equity to finance another deal.
Mm.
So in other words, what you're going to do, instead of borrowing against that equity, like with the HELOC, you use the equity as additional collateral to the lender. So they'll have liens on both properties.
Okay.
The property that you own plus the property that you're buying.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then one that I have not mentioned is an FHA loan, which are backed by the federal government. Now, here's an interesting fact. I think the only one that talks about it is, what is his name? on Bigger Pockets. Is it Brandon Turner? Brandon Turner. His last name is Turner. He talks about it. I think he calls it. He's got a name for house hacking or something like that. So basically, what you do is you go buy a house with an FHA mortgage. So you need less. You need 3% down. Sometimes 3.5% down. And you buy the house and you live in it for a year, and then you could sell it after a year. Okay. Now, the interesting thing is you could do this with a duplex and you could do this with a multifamily. Like Sean, my other partner, did it with a 4-family in East Hartford.
Yeah.
So he was making $800 a month and living in one of the apartments for free. Right? I mean, he still owns it. He didn't sell it, but he was house hacking because that was the only thing he could do before he met me was do it that way.
Yeah.
Right. So my point is that most people think you have to do that for a pretty house. What most don't realize is that FHAs have a loan called a 203K, and that's the form number. And what they do is they will lend you money to buy the house, and then they will lend you money to do the repairs. And it's what the government calls a rehabilitation mortgage. Right? So the interesting thing about 203Ks, which I should probably do a podcast with Jessie, my daughter, because she's pretty good at these. She's done them before. The point that I'm making is that a 203K loan, there's stages, and I have learned through her that if you can do $30,000 or less, it's quick.
Quick to get the loan?
Yeah, anything over $30,000. It's not harder, but it's more, they control it more. They have disbursements, and it's a little bit more red tape. Right? So this way here, you can buy a house cheap because it needs repairs. You can get an FHA 203K loan to do the repairs and then sell it for a profit.
And you roll that into the next house.
Right.
And if you did that 4 or 5 times in 10 years, you'd have a house for free, wouldn't you?
Right.
Pretty crazy.
Or you could do what somebody like me does, because I've been working on my taxes and I'm scratching my head because I'm like, I'm looking for I'm thinking that I had a couple of houses. I had houses, more than a couple. I had houses I sold this year. I don't. It's because I'm on this path now. I keep everything. I buy and keep everything. So my taxes are, for the first time ever, much different than they ever been because I don't have short-term capital gains tax because I kept everything. Yeah. I thought I did 2 or 3 transactions, but they were last year, the end of last year. So I did a couple 1031 exchanges. Now I bought a bunch of houses this year. Right? 2022, not this year. Right? I bought a bunch of houses, but they're all subject twos and owner financing, and I have a private lender, and it's and it was interesting to see where I made a decision that I'm going to change my portfolio and how it's affecting my taxes. So now I think I haven't done it yet, but I think I'm actually going to go from paying to collecting.
Yeah. We just did ours, and it wasn't a big collect, but I didn't pay. I actually collected a bit this year. So yeah, it's interesting. Have fun.
Yeah.
It sure is different though than just making money getting clobbered. This is making money and having deductions all over the place, and saving a lot on taxes. And that's what the tax code is for. And you do this because you're putting people in houses. It isn't just about you. When you do these things, you give homes to people. That's a good thing. You get breaks for doing that, spending money on things, the interest, the expenses, repairs.
Yeah, we're gonna talk that in a couple podcasts from now. I've already written it. It's like pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like when I write ahead. If I write the podcast the week of, but I like when I write because I think I'm a month ahead right now.
Wow.
And I like that because then I could kind of create a little series there and keep them, connected.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Anyways, another good source of money is credit unions. Like I just did a deal. I needed to pay some taxes on a property.
Mhm.
So my son-in-law works for the water company and they have credit union. So
Yeah.
I borrowed money. Now in this particular case, I had to do what I had to do because I just had money tied up everywhere. So I
Mhm.
borrowed the money. I borrowed 10 grand, and 3 months later, I just pay it back.
Yep.
Right. The point is the credit unions are good because they're usually they're unions, right? And they want to help their union cardholders,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
And like with him, they take it right out of his paycheck, and then once a month, I just give him a check.
Yeah.
But the interest rate was low, like it was like what you were saying, four point something, and it was easy to do. It was done in a week,
Yep.
right? So those are a good source if you know somebody that works, that is willing to help you.
Hmm.
So let me get clear about something before we scoot off here.
Yes.
Is it a horrible thing if my brother-in-law, or in my case, my son-in-law, has the ability to go to a credit union and get $10, $20, $30,000, and I make him my partner in a deal and give him 50%? Is that horrible?
Well, everything can be nothing can be judged unless you compare it to something, right?
Yep.
So compare it to the alternative of not doing the deal and making zero.
Right. Right. So in the beginning, if you partner with somebody, you could do a couple deals and just get used to the transactions. And now, I don't always suggest you do that for long-term deals, but you could. It's not a problem.
Hmm.
It's how I got my education. Is I partnered with a partner I had in another business, and in the end, it was the worst thing I ever did because he took too much money. But up until that point, we did a lot of deals, dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of deals.
Yep.
Because he said he had money, but it took me about 6 months to burn through his money, less than a year, and we ended up doing other things. But the point is that what I learned from having his cash, because it always gave me confidence knowing that I had that cash.
Sure.
So I would spout numbers out like I was Rockefeller, and he would have to worry about the money.
Mm.
Right. Also kept me on my toes on how good of a deal I had, because I knew if it was a bad deal, he wouldn't fund me. So having money people around you is a good way to keep yourself in check.
Yeah. The funny thing about money people is the reason they have money is because they're careful with money.
Right.
They don't just blow. They don't they don't win the lottery and lose it all in a year, right?
Right.
They have money because they have it and they hang on and they pay attention.
So you could also look for, if you so desire, you should write all this down. I just gave you some good places to find money. But if you're looking for private lenders around the country, there's a website called privatelenders.com. Or if you want to do a local lender, you could do privatemoneygoldmine.com. So privatelenders.com for around the nation, or you could do privatemoneygoldmine.com.
Mm-hmm.
You should write that down. Right? And then the last resource for today is if you want to learn more about private money, Pete and I have a private course, a private lending training at flippinghousesforrookies.com. Private Money Talk. So it's flippinghousesforrookies.com/private money talk. So you can. That's not the link in the description. I should have probably put that in there, but I didn't. You can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com. Private Money Talk. It's a free training that Peter and I did, and we go over all the different aspects of private money, including the 4 or 5 places that you can get money. I mean, I gave you some of them today, but there's more good stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'd like to point something out, though. I don't think you spit it out directly, because when you talk about funding, if you take an option on a house, and for 90 days, you find a buyer who brings the money in. Didn't you fund the deal with the buyer? So that's funding too, folks.
Yep.
And everything else that's very creative is funding as well. So, I mean, I think I can summarize in my own simple way of saying we can have creative real estate on creatively controlling the property or creatively controlling the money too.
Right.
That's creative. How you getting money? You got to be creative.
Right.
You know, I've asked some of the people that I know, music students, my family, they got money and it's sitting there and they don't know what to do with it. They collect tiny, tiny interest. So you could help your family or friends, you know, make more money. This isn't just because we need money because we're poor or anything. This makes them more money. So you're doing them a favor.
The hardest piece of real estate that I have to deal with in my entire life is the real estate between your ears.
Mine personally?
Which is, no, I just mean in general. Yeah, yours sometimes, just like you have the same problem with me. But that's the reason why we started the podcast off with beliefs. Do you believe what we just talked about? Do you believe any of this could be true? All you need to do, and I think I was talking to you. Was I talking to you about this yesterday?
What?
No, I was talking to Jay yesterday.
Okay, our friend Jay.
Yeah, and we were talking about this. And the oddest thing in the world to me is people make decisions on data without evaluating it.
Mm-hmm.
And the odd thing is usually the first time they hear it is what sticks. Not completely false data.
Yeah.
You know, like in 2023, President Trump was the president.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they could believe that if they wanted to. It's ridiculous, but they could believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so the first piece of information is what sticks. So think of it this way. It's like, what is it, Geiger counter? Where they get the sticks to find the water?
No, that's to find radiation.
Radiation.
Divining rod, maybe?
Divining rod, yeah. Rod? So here's the thing. Once you get an idea, the first time you hear a piece of information, you get that idea in your head. You now go to try to prove it right or wrong, depending on what your belief is. If you believe it's right, then you'll find something to support it. If you believe it's wrong, you'll find something to support it. Right? Mm-hmm. So the interesting thing to me is that people do not evaluate or inspect or correctly research facts.
Yeah.
Right. So here's what happens is the biggest thing that mankind has trouble with is sorting out what's a fact, what's true. So a fact is an observable piece of information.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So a fact is I have 3 bottles of water on my desk, and you go there and there's 3 bottles of water on my desk.
Yeah.
Right. And an opinion is an unobservable fact.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that can't be observed, or it has illogic attached to it, or it's got craziness attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So people, when they evaluate data, don't put it in those 2 buckets. Right? So realize that information and data makes things happen. It creates action. It creates results. Right?
Yeah.
That's the purpose of information, is to get things done,
to
perpetuate or propel the future.
Yep.
Right? Is to get you into the future more better than what you are. You know, like enhancement, like you're going through it, and you know, we talk about the deals. You'll do one deal, it might take you a year, and then the second deal might take you 6 months, and then the third deal will take you 3 months, and the fourth deal might take you a month. It's because every time you go through it, number of times over again creates certainty. Right? So information should get you past the situation that's holding you back, if it's correct data.
Mm-hmm.
So if you find the right reason why it's holding you back, then you won't be held back anymore. Right? You know me, I'm crude sometimes, right? So I always say definition of solution is problem goes away.
Yeah.
So if you have the right information, so if you have I don't know how to find leads, and then you go find a piece of data, and all of a sudden now you got 20 leads. Well, you found the right piece of information.
Yep.
If you find the right piece of information and a month from now you still don't have leads, then you're thinking with the wrong information, because it didn't perpetuate or propel your ideal scene or what you were looking to get, or your goal or your aim. It didn't help you get closer to that.
Mm.
And it's kind of funny because I've been, as you know, I've been recently kind of like, I'm lecturing on my recent studies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the point is that usually the first piece of information somebody hears. So when they hear subject to is bad because there's a due on sale clause, they didn't research it, they didn't think about it, they automatically assume that that person they were telling you was right. You know, you listen to Turner, whatever his name is, I forgot his first name, Turner on Bigger Pockets, and he bashes the crap out of subject to. That's because the first deal he did was subject to, and he lost his shirt, and he never learned how to do it the right way.
Wow.
Instead of just learning from his failures, he just bashed it.
Wow.
And that's what most people do. Anyways,
Mm-hmm.
enough of that. So we're all done for today. End of podcast number 350. Please make sure wherever you're watching us or listening to us, you go subscribe to us, to this podcast. Also, like us or dislike us. Leave us a comment so we can see or hear your feedback. Also, if you want to get into one of our chats, you can go to WhatsApp Messenger, and you can go to Let's Talk Real Estate, or you can go to flippinghousesforrookies.com, and there is a support ticket up on the right-hand side, and you can send those support tickets to me. Okay? So we're over and out. Next time you hear from us, it will be podcast number 351. And the name of that podcast is Top Problems for Rookies in Creative Real Estate in Today's Economy. Okay? And we'll see you then. Have a good week. Thank you for being here.